This is Math 2, 7.1b notes. That's Unit 7, Lesson 1b, and the title is Pythagorean Theorem. You've learned this back in previous years. You did work with it last year, and we did a little bit of it this year as well. Okay, so Pythagorean Theorem works only for right triangles. And when you have a right triangle, I'm going to put letters here to represent the sides. I'll call this side A, this side B, and that side C. Now typically side C is labeled the hypotenuse and AB are the legs, but that's not the way it has to be. Another person may call it ABC or ABC. I mean, there's any other way you can rename it, but for the sake of this problem, we're going to typically call C our hypotenuse unless stated otherwise. Okay, so the formula, if you remember Pythagorean theorem, we have worked with it a little bit in this class. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. All right, so that is something you will need to remember and know how to use for this upcoming test. Okay, find the missing side. I'm going to put in parentheses radical form. I want you to leave your answer in radical form. You're not going to be using calculators to get decimal forms. We will use calculators eventually to get decimal form, but not on this lesson. We're going to leave our answer in radical form. And you want to pay attention on the test because there are some that say leave answers in radical form. You want to pay attention and read. Okay, number 1. Remember what was stated. You only use Pythagorean theorem on right triangles. There's my right triangle. This is 6, this is 4, that is x. Find the missing side. The missing side I'm looking for in this problem is here opposite the 90-degree angle, which means this is the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is always opposite the 90. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You square and add your two legs will always equal your hypotenuse squared. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you call this A and that B or that B and that A, as long as your hypotenuse is your C, or the one that's by itself on the other side, the equal C squared piece. All right, so I'm going to write 6 squared plus 4 squared equals x squared. And we're going to work it out. 6 squared is 36 plus 4 squared is 16 equals C squared. 36 plus 46 is 52. And you've learned this before. To undo a square, you square root. And that is because square roots and squares are inverse operations. They don't cancel each other out, they undo each other. They undo each other. All right, so I have C equals the square root of 52. And I want to leave it in radical form, so I'm not going to plug in my calculator, but I am going to break it down to see if any pairs come out. I know for sure it's even, so I can divide by 2. That you can plug in your calculator. When I said no calculators, what I mean is don't plug in square root of 52 and get a decimal. You can use your calculators for this. Divide, you get 26. Divide 13. So I have the square root of 2, 13. Take out your pairs. 2 times 2 comes out as a 2. The root 13 stays in. Final answer is 2 root 13. And I called it C here, 2 root 13. I don't know if that confused anybody. I went from x squared to c squared. Technically, mathematically, it is x squared. If you went to c squared like I did, it's no big deal. It is okay. I did go back to x at the end. And at the end, if you left it c, that is okay as well. Okay, number 2. Okay, so there's my right triangle. I have 3 root 15 and x. All right, this here is my missing side. What you want to pay attention to is that the missing side is not the hypotenuse. Many times kids will say 3 squared plus root 15 3 squared plus root 15 squared equals x squared. They always want to put the variable on the c squared piece. That's not always the case. In this particular problem, the root 15 is the c. So again, you want to be careful. All right, so we're going to have a squared plus b squared, 3 squared plus x squared. If you put x squared plus 3 squared, that's perfectly fine, equals the square root of 15 squared. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. 3 squared is 9 plus x squared. Now remember, we talked about this in our previous lesson. Square roots and squares undo each other. Boom, boom, you're left with just 15. Or you think of it the way I first explained it, root 15 times root 15, because that's what the square, and it's just 15. I'm hoping eventually you don't have to write it that way or even think of it. You just know square roots and squares, inverse operations, like up here, they undo each other. All right, I'm ready to solve. I can't square root both sides yet, so I'm going to subtract the 9. X squared equals 6. And then we square root both sides. Again, inverse operations, square roots and squares undo each other. Now you're going to break down the 6. I'm going to do that over here. 6 breaks down to 2 and 3, both of which are prime. No pairs come out at all, so it's going to stay root 6. X equals the square root of 6, and that there is your final answer. Okay, number 3. Is the following a right triangle? Is the following a right triangle? Okay. All right, on this one, I'm giving you all the sides, and I'm asking you, is it a right triangle? I didn't mark it, and you can't say, yeah, it looks like it is, because a degree that is 89 degrees, an angle that's 89 degrees, is going to look very much like a 90-degree angle. Okay, so looking like a right triangle is not enough. We need to prove mathematically whether it is or is not. Now, the way it's drawn, you can kind of tell that there is your hypotenuse. You'll have some on your assignment where they're not like this. They're just 9 root 181, and they just give you 3 numbers. How do you know which one is your hypotenuse? Because that is important. You need to have it in the right spot. I'm going to take the square root of 181. It is 13.45, which is bigger than 9, so this here is my C. So when they give you a list of numbers and you're not sure which one's the biggest, square root it. Your biggest is not always going to be this one. Whatever the number, like for example, if 9 was 15, then that would be the biggest. Whatever is the biggest will always be your C value. So I'm going to have 9 squared plus 9 squared equals the square root of 181 squared. All right, 9 squared is 81 plus 81 equals square roots and squares undo each other, 181. 81 plus 81 is 162. Does that equal 181? It does not, which means what about this image or the 3 numbers? It is not a right triangle. So your answers are going to be it's not a right triangle or it is a right triangle. And you do have some of these on the test, so make sure you understand fully and completely how to do them. That is it for this lesson.